but I think a lot of listeners probably want to hear your thoughts on Stab in the Dark, of course. So let's front load the show with that.
Okay.
Let's first talk about the Kelly series, and we'll get to the Ethan series later. But I heard you say that you were a little bit dismayed by the way that Stab edited the Kelly series.
Yeah. I've said that, and I've kind of been all over the place. I mean, they have a in my mind, I haven't really said too much publicly, but the the way it was presented with the whole Kelly thing, um, it was pretty ambiguous. Like there's no one who won anything there except for, I think it was good for their subscribership and that good on them for doing that, because we all have a business we need to uphold and keep going. And I get that part of it. And, um, but so from my standpoint, where I was coming from was I didn't know what I was stepping into. I didn't know it was only guys who have won until I was being recorded, moments before I found out I won. I hadn't done any interviewing, hadn't talked to anybody about it. And so all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm in a snake pit. And I felt, so when I was getting interviewed, I was in San Diego. All those guys had gotten interviewed months before, or a couple months before, in Oz, and they were all together, as you saw, and so I I didn't know about any of that having gone on, and I didn't know they'd been together. I didn't know if that there was an opportunity I could have been down there for or anything like that. So it was and that probably was just circumstantial and whatever. And so I was in the dark literally about any kind of um, production design ideas or layout or how they're going to roll it out. And I also didn't have any idea about the personalities that were affected, or the people the guys, the other shapers that were affected by the structure of the competition of shapers. So I didn't know any of that. And then all of a sudden I'm watching the series episode by episode going, oh, I see what happened. And finally, by the end of it, I'm like, hey man, I didn't know any of this was going on. It looked like I was placed into the event by some evil corporate warlords and the Firewire people, and they're evil, and those are the bad guys, and these are the good guys. And it was just like, come on, man. So that part was kind of, and then ultimately it just was like, um, Kelly had to suffer the brunt of a lot of the online jar stuff, which I trust that he can filter that out, and he does a good job of that after years and years of dealing with it. But um, you know, so those were the criticisms I had of Stab. And however, like I said, they have a business they're trying to do, and as they produce that, they already were working on the next one, Stab 11, with Ethan. And so a lot of it was I don't know. Now knowing what happened with Ethan's, in hindsight, maybe it was to make me look goofy and whatever over there, so that the next result was solid, and it just adds to the drama of it all. I don't know. Who knows?
Um, yeah, it's interesting to hear your perspective because they explicitly state that they had conversations with Dylan, and I forget who's the other person they said
It's
they had
probably Terry, Kelly's
Terry, that's
manager.
right. Yeah, Terry and Dylan, um, about your inclusion as part of including you with the other previously winning shapers.
Mm-hmm.
So they either did have that conversation and then your team didn't communicate it to you, or they didn't have that conversation. So that is weird because the narrative was very clear about it.
Right. And I didn't know that until I watched it the same time as you, probably.
Yeah, that's weird. What are your thoughts on Kelly claiming to not know that the board was yours?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't read his mind. I trust him, and so what I think he would probably, what can be said for sure from where I'm standing is he would not have chosen anything but the board he liked the most, period. Whether he knew ahead of time which one was which. I know I feel like, he's running down to the water with each board going, God, I wonder if this thing's the magic, and he's constantly, like right now, he's on the Gold Coast, constantly looking at boards and guys who build boards. He's talking to everybody. He's always on the hunt for good boards. And, So his willingness to, be take on another shaper or with like Woo or, whatever, it's not something that he's afraid of doing. Therefore, I feel like if mine wasn't what he liked the most, he would have definitely said so. And that part of the whole, conversation doesn't get really talked about too much, I don't think. At least, I shut off Instagram for a little while after just to avoid it all, but my understanding was that there wasn't a whole lot of conversation about would he have thrown it just for me? I don't think so at all. Like, there's no way, uh, he would have chosen anything but the board that he liked the most of the ones he was trying.
Do you feel like any of the negativity surrounding that controversy was directed at you, or do you feel like you just got, negatively tainted by it through association?
Um, I think any outfall that was negative for me was by association or just by people not knowing my jam, knowing my story or whatever. That was the real, hard part for me was to be like, "Oh, man, there's 30 years of making surfboards with different materials and hand shaping, just thousands, tens of thousands of boards, shaping billions of, off the machine and, selling a lot of boards through Firewire and, I've shaped for JS, I've shaped for Channel Islands and, it's just a lot of back pain and, fumes and, and stress and worrying and obsession of over surfboards for so long to look like I was just implanted as a little prop from corporate people, which is not even the case. Those guys aren't like that. And Kelly would never stand for that. He would never ride a board that he didn't really like. And so not being able to kind of Scott's on with you all the time. And, so like just being able to like have the support. I saw a clip that you guys did, with Bass, and it was like, he knows my backstory quite well, and he's very supportive about it all, and I appreciate it so much. But to not have that sort of even mentioned within the stab layout was or rollout was difficult. Just I guess
Yeah.
from an ego standpoint.
Okay. Well, I was hoping that your feelings weren't hurt by any of it because I do actually get into the weeds and read all the comments on certainly on Stab's website, but then to a certain degree on Instagram. And the way that I read it all was zero animosity towards you. In fact, and recently, I've seen a lot of people advocating for you in the way that Scott Bass did as well. People saying like, "We owe Dan Mann an apology," I think was one of
Oh,
the one of the recent comments. Um, and I was like, yeah, because the Kelly not knowing or knowing, the Firewire politics involvement, all of that had nothing to do with you. And to your point, Kelly's out there riding the board and the proof is in the pudding. And so if Kelly likes your board best and we can all see it, then
yeah,
that is what it is. It's
right.
unfortunate if you got caught up in it. But I think my comment back to Scott at some point was I feel like you're actually the right guy for this job because you almost seem like you're happy no matter what, or you're at least positive no matter what. And I could see it wearing on somebody else a little more heavily. So I'm actually a little bit surprised to hear that your feelings were a little bit bothered by it because I thought you were um, maybe just not paying attention or maybe just,
No,
couldn't
I
care.
appreciate you saying that, and that brings up more of the human factor of what's going on in this. If you zoom out a little bit, is as human beings and monkeys running around on the planet here, what's going on? And yeah, and so for me to if I said I wasn't affected, or I was just happy go lucky skipping through the tulips, the whole time, that would be a total lie. And it gave me, but I will say, and I appreciate even as it was happening, as I was watching it, I didn't like it right away. I was like, "Oh man, I wanted to be, the winner and feel great about having won. I wanted to be recognized for my work I'd been doing for the last, whole lifetime of working on surfboards." But that didn't come, and it's been in a large part been made up for with Ethan's thing. But but I needed to have that happen so that I did do the work of what you kind of alluded to was being someone who could transcend. There's a poem called If, and it's like you take a tragedy or a huge victory, a triumph or a tragedy, and you treat those two imposters the same. And that's what I was like, okay, I got to get there. And I could take the shortcut and get a little victory with Ethan's was a victory-ish kind of a thing for me personally to like help me get out of the feeling not happy about the result from Kelly's. But on a human level, I needed to go through that. It's the hero's journey factor of, going through the muck and transcending it and using it as a way to make yourself more in tuned person, more, just a emotionally stronger, more emotionally mature person. And so like, it was that, and I was Scott again, in that clip, he says, Dan's got a 30,000-foot view from, or something like that. And I was like, I'm glad that you guys think that about me. And I do stumble every once in a while, and I get caught up in the ego and caught up in the competitiveness, and people, my peers or whatever saying negative things that they don't know the story of, is definitely affects me. And I try real hard to not let it affect me and try to get above it.